Hey everybody, welcome back to the House of Holocrons podcast. This evening we're going to be talking about a lot of the backstage and kind of like shop class stuff for Star Wars, especially with the new Light and Magic documentary out on Disney Plus. We wanted to review a bit of the ILM story and stuff because it's a really interesting story. Got us all really excited for the extras. You guys ever watch all the extras on the end of the DVD collections? Because that was like my favorite thing. You watch
Duh.
all the movies, and then you just watch the deleted scenes and the backstage documentaries like 50
That's
times.
part of what got me into animation
Okay,
and become in trying to do the world building.
nice.
I used to, but I don't do it as much now. Um, I do remember I think it's about 10 years ago, they came out with that big pack
Mm-hmm.
of the Star Wars movies, and they had a lot on that they never shown before.
Yeah,
And that one was pretty interesting to go through. And then with that documentary, see a little bit more focus on the special effects that they did.
they really need to put all of that on Disney Plus, or if nothing else, I need to find some way to buy like each individual DVD set because they all almost seem to have come with a different documentary or like backstage story stuff. I
Yeah,
remember I
that
had the box set for the prequel trilogy, and there was just like so much really awesome stuff about like all the up to release and after release of episode 1 and 2 and 3. It was so good.
And then all the interviews they do now, like that just
Mm-hmm.
get released on YouTube. I want those on a hard copy
That'd
so
be
we
so
can just
nice.
watch them.
That's what I love so much about Star Wars. It's always had a camera backstage running constantly. There's always been people taking pictures and filming.
one thing I like about all of them weren't hardly any of them. Even George Lucas was still a newbie in the
Mm,
film world, and all of them, like there's a large chunk of ILM that never had any experience on a movie set, never did anything with filming. Some of them were filming for fun.
yeah.
I remember I had a couple of short films that I made. Made a fun class project. We had our own special effects. It was pretty funny. We
Mm-hmm.
had a blown up hand. That was one of my favorite special effects where we popped a balloon
Mm-hmm.
in a certain room, acoustic sounding room, at my local church, and it echoed and it sounded next to the camera sounded like an explosion.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut away, and all of a sudden we had just a baggie full of ketchup, and he's squirting his hand everywhere. It's really funny.
Nice.
Yeah, and we did other effects like throwing
Mm-hmm.
firecrackers outside. It sounded like a distant gunshot, and then I remember as a kid, which is a practice that a lot of them using as perspective. And I remember I had some GI Joes when I was young, and filming those with my mom's house indoor house plants, like a
Mm-hmm.
jungle
Oh yeah.
scenarios. I had grainy texture because it was kind of a crappy cheap camera, and
Right.
it I convinced my sister and some people that we had somebody buff dude like up into some trees and stuff. It was pretty cool, and that's a lot of them. It's interesting. That's what they got into.
I've definitely made a
Just
few little fan films too as a kid. It's definitely a lot of fun. But yeah, like you
and
talked
they
about this.
just took that hobby and ran with
Yeah,
it.
episode 1 really talks about that. It's awesome how like yeah, like you said, stop motion and a lot of just like fan made films about just nothing or just what they own wanted, what they had thought of themselves. It was really cool to see all of that. I really enjoyed though how they kind of had their own area away from everything. It's so crazy because most
Yeah,
other effects teams and stuff are on set usually, and these guys were in San Francisco the whole time.
a lot of the on the special features you get, a lot of
Hmm.
them cover the England side of things
Yeah.
where they did most of the filming. Most of them don't cover too much the ALM side. I guess that side's not typically looked as exciting because the actors aren't there, and they just kind of did their own thing.
Hmm.
Which is the funny part is when George showed up after being doing all the filming, how angry he was because they
Yeah.
only had two things shot.
They're. I've always loved how like Carrie Fisher and Luke always said, George's big thing was always right again. Was it again faster with more intensity? He would always tell everyone that just constantly. That's just like that was always his thing.
But
And
that was this whole idea was he wanted 2001: Space Odyssey,
Mhm.
but faster.
Right.
So he wanted everything fast.
Which, I mean, it worked out.
Yeah.
It really worked out for him.
Well,
We got
because
amazing stuff.
Oh yeah.
a lot of those effects were so hard to do before then. Most of them were really slow panning, really artsy, really shiny and chromy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we didn't get really that high, fast, kind of grudgy look at that time.
I mean, Lucasfilm has defined visual effects.
Especially
they've-
in space.
Well, that's one thing he said. They said, he didn't have a choice. He couldn't go to another visual studio because there wasn't any. They were making. They had to literally make their own everything.
Mhm.
None of
Yeah.
this existed before.
And that's why they're driving everything now. Like anything that we use today, they made in some way.
What is that newest thing called?
I can't remember the name of it is.
A lot of
the
the- a
giant
lot of the-
screen that they use
Yeah,
for Mandalorian.
there's that new giant screen, the volume.
Before,
Yes.
They use the
before we did
volume.
I mean, they still use a lot of the camera.
Oh, yeah.
They designed.
Well, and again,
with ARM.
Yeah, like you said,
That
they
was
invented
used in a
all
lot
of that.
Yeah.
They literally wood and screws and bolts and whatever, and like some metal plating, whatever they could get, and they made these boom arms for cameras, and they made these platforms, and they made all these giant rig machines. They invented. I mean, what was it? The one where it literally compresses like 4 to 5 pieces of film at once together, so you could actually get the entire shot in one scene.
Yep.
Is the printer they
Yeah.
they came out
It would
with, yeah.
smash all together, take a photo, then put the photo on this film. It's so cool to think that they had to invent all this stuff.
Well, like Lucasfilm defined like what would happen if you let engineers go
If you
and
let
just
them,
let them make something and make what they needed instead of going, oh well, we'll just do it in post, or we'll just figure it out later.
When it gets the name
Well,
ILM, it really makes sense because it really is like light and magic in the industrial world. It's so amazing the things they did, and again,
Well,
that's why we
yeah.
like your X-wing and the models behind you. They're iconic, and it's way more remembered than the Flash Gordons or anything like that, which people loved. But this is going to be, those ships are going to be visible and known for more and more generations.
I think, well, like you were saying, the interesting fact is before that, filmmaking was still about 40, 50 years behind what they should have been.
Yeah.
And so that's where they pushed that budget, they pushed the envelope, and that's an interesting thing, which some always knew about. It's Star Wars probably wouldn't have made as big of an impact if the whole shock value that it caused at the time. That they literally broke new ground that changed filmmaking as a whole.
Right. And then that's, I guess, really that free spirit and all of that kind of melds together within George's like extremely like guided, focused line to make Star Wars. And I mean, it worked, didn't it? It all really worked out. It is really cool to see how many things, even on the animation field, which someone went to school for.
Yeah.
In the animation world, like they literally invented the machine and the computers that could render like a hand, like the guy who they hired, and like they were what is it? They were talking about how like it's amazing how this was one of the first real companies for special effects backed by the director.
Between them and Pixar, like they've have created animation.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. They were discussing where, the man who invented a lot of it was already kind of made, but he had to program every different. He had to program just to do the hand, all the different hand and the 3D animation. Yeah, it's so interesting. One thing I didn't know, a lot of the stuff I kind of already knew from the stuff I've seen before. One thing I didn't realize is how much of Episode 1 and Empire was just painted background.
Yeah.
I knew they did that in movies, but I didn't know that it was that much in Star Wars. This is pretty impressive that they kind of sell that so well.
Those matte backgrounds were. How much do you think? Are they like they exist still? Who has those? How
I'm
much
sure
would
they
one
do.
of those
That's
be?
Probably at the ranch.
Those have to be like if you have to
Obi-Wan
spend a few
Ranch.
million. You give them a few $1,000,000, you can have a matte painting, maybe.
Well, the Empire ones were in crazy detailed, which that was they had to push the envelope even
Oh
further.
yeah, I love that when he was like, that was actually the bottomless pit was a matte painting. That was so cool. I had never known that. I honestly always thought it was just like a 3D thing, not thinking that they didn't have that before then.
Yeah.
There
That's
was
so.
that really, I think the only real animation
Mm-hmm.
from the first one was the stop motion. I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
they had really any animation until Empire. They started kind of playing around with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And you said that's what got you into animation.
Oh yeah. Well, not only animation, but like the story side,
Okay.
like creating creatures and creating worlds, and because like looking at the behind the scenes stuff and what they would do to make something just come to life, how they had to think about how it interacts with the environment, how it interacts with the other characters or anything like that, how it affects the world. That's what I love.
Yeah.
That's one thing I love that George Lucas always pushed is he always wanted a world and a reason for something. When they were building the ships, he said if there's a box there, it needs wires or tubing leading to something
Yeah.
else. It had to have a function. It had to be if there's a hatch, it had to have a ladder. Everything had to be able to tell a story. So if you were able to kind of like barely look, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't look like some kind of smooth giant saucer or like that's what was seen beforehand.
Yeah.
It was just kind of just like generic image. It wasn't nothing had a purpose, and that's one thing that really sells Star Wars. It
Mm-hmm.
feels more alive that way.
Oh yeah, that's again, the models have always been awesome. That's why I think it was really cool with the sequels and some of the scenes how they went back to the models with a lot of that. The prequels were 3D animation haven, and I know a lot of people complain about like the old non super cluttered version versus the newer releases of the originals where they put a lot more 3D stuff in there. I of course grew up watching a lot more of the stuff with the 3D stuff in there, and that was I liked it because that's what George wanted. He just didn't have the technology to do it back then. He wanted this extremely vibrant, lived-in world.
I love one thing I loved a lot about in movies. It was always a passion of mine. I got into collecting it, and then I got into making some,
Mm-hmm.
which is props. Um, in the vehicles as well as they just made models. I said all forced perspective, and it was crazy. It's just so funny how they had to buy a bunch of different, which I knew they did, but they kept buying like big bulk of models because
Mm-hmm.
where the term kit bashing came from, it wasn't new to Star Wars, but Star Wars really pushed the envelope on it, and that was something when I get into some of the costuming world with Star Wars was the idea of kit bashing,
Right.
and they just literally took pieces of World War II models and stuck them places to just kind of fill the void, so it didn't look like I said. Because
Yeah.
before that, most of your spaceships were these smooth chrome type ships, and they're pretty boring. Which is also interesting is when the fact that one of them never realized that they could just take the mold of it and just print a bunch of them, and how much cheaper it was than to constantly keep rebuying the same model.
The models too, I know, are like a super high dollar thing. That'd be really fun to have. But honestly, the replicas that you can get for Walmart and toy shops are just as good in some cases. I know like Hot Toys makes some super crazy realistic figures.
Yeah, about I think it was about like 10 or 15 years ago they were selling uh, pieces of the Death Star,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't super expensive. They were like on auctions. They were going for a couple $100 depending on what it was.
Yeah.
I really wish back then I bought because that was the closest I thought I could get to the real Star Wars set.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes
So,
sense.
and it's funny, like they talked about they just copied the same six squares
Mm-hmm.
and just rotated them different combinations, and it's stuff that I knew, but even then, it's just fun to watch
Right.
the actual process how they did it. And also the funny thing is because they're all have their own backgrounds,
Yeah.
but which really I think really helped because they all had their own individual skills or something they were good at, so they each added something. One of the guys' funniest his addition was the showing them super glue, which they were using epoxy, so they had to sit and let it dry and tape it down until he shows up with some industrial super glue. It's like,
Man.
hey, you could just glue this down and just go.
Right, and it's such a lifesaver. Oh, it makes life so much quicker. I know that personally with my job. Um, I also really love. I think one of my favorite things I would always like watch in the background stuff, or the, well, that would be the sounds, like how they made the blaster fire from like hitting a wire from a electrical post, or the lightsaber hum from a camera to a vacuum.
Yeah, because we don't think about that kind of stuff now.
Right.
It's literally just a button. We find the sound somewhere and click a button.
Yep, they had to invent these noises.
Yeah,
they had
they
to
had to
invent
invent
these
them.
sounds. TIE fighters, X-wings, the blasters, ships, all of it. It was so crazy. It's so much fun too.
Multiple different animals combined.
Yep, like a whale, lion, and a bear all thrown into one.
Yeah. It's, just to have been around at that time and be able to create everything would have been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I'm sure-
problem solving.
Well-
I'm sure the experience was not only fun and fulfilling, but also very
Yeah.
daunting. 'Cause
Oh, very daunting. I'm
They were
sure.
talking about 18 hours or longer days.
But some of that was
Months.
broken up with like going. What they said, they had a jacuzzi at the shop.
They made
and-
something. I would say like 10 of the hours was at least very voluntary, but the rest of
Yeah.
it might have been a little
Yeah.
bit begrudging. So, maybe sometimes, some days. Everyone has a bad day, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, but that's the vibe that really helped, I think, and their freedom from all of it. But again, like with the England side that you see in a lot more of the documentaries from the films, it was such a crazy structured thing where they were building these massive sites and then filming for like 4 hours, and then they would tear it down to start building the next massive site, while they would go to a different stage to film the next few scenes. It's so crazy how the scale of this was. And again, George still always wanted it like bigger and faster, and it's just like, man,
Yeah.
if he could have gotten exactly what he wanted, I almost wonder like, what would that have looked like? That would have been so grandiose and crazy.
Well, he always said that the movie was about 25% of his vision.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've always like found crazy about George Lucas as a director, is the original vision he has must be some crazy trip, because if what he gives us with like Indiana Jones and all of it, if what he gives us is this good, but he wants it to be better still, I mean, there's only so much we can do. I'm sure if we get into like VR movies, ILM will be at the forefront of that. Blowing people's mind with think they're actually in the movie or something.
I mean, because especially with the volume,
Mm-hmm.
because it's adaptive. You can have animators and 3D model everybody on set, kind of like in another room. But you can be like, oh, we need to change the lighting in this area and then add something here and change how this looks just a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can do it instantly.
And I know a lot of people are complaining because there's been like a few inaccuracies, or like the big thing right now is like Obi-Wan Kenobi series at the Inquisitorium scene, when they're leaving, the snowspeeders that show up to rescue look like they change size kind of, but the way they're on the screen, because they're actually sometimes on the background in the volume, and then other times they're a 3D image laid over everything. And it's just it's new, they're learning. That's the way I looked at it. It's like they're trying new technology again. They're inventing things. If it's a little off because they're pumping out 12 shows at a time right now, pretty much.
yeah.
Whatever. I'm
But I
not
mean,
going to complain that hard.
It's already done wonders for the actors. Because
Oh,
the
yeah.
actors are like, I can actually see what I'm looking at. I
Yeah.
can see the two suns.
Obi-Wan, Ewan McGregor was talking about how much easier it was, because he's like, no, you're actually like in it now. I remember being in a big blue world where it was blue mats and blue backgrounds and blue fans, but here I was actually on Tatooine. It was amazing.
Yeah, it not only helps the actor, I'm sure in the long run, it will probably save you money
Yeah.
and time. But yeah,
That
sure,
initial cost, though.
I think one thing that really helps that we don't really see, because we're kind of spoiled in this situation, is we have to understand this is a series. It's almost like a TV show, and getting this high quality for a live action Star Wars series TV show scenario is pretty good.
Yeah.
better than uh, probably some of the newer movies.
Right.
Well, this
I
Andor
mean,
looks
it's
movie quality.
Oh,
yeah.
well, The
So that
Mandalorian. That's the thing. I've talked to a few people recently that I've just met. New jobs and places like that. They've just now starting to watch Star Wars because they got into it because of The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian is really teaching people like, no, this is Star Wars. If it's like really just like focused in on, so these new shows are bringing in a lot of new fans, and that's awesome. If nonetheless, I'll take that. More fandom means more money for them, and more money for them means more stories for me, and that's all I care about in the end is getting more Star Wars.
More Star Wars that actually like fits Star Wars, not trying to pull people in.
Yeah, no, we don't need to pull people in. We just need to make Star Wars because that's what's made it so great. That's why I really always hope they never touch the world between worlds because I've always enjoyed that they've kept the whole story of Star Wars as a congruent timeline.
they don't like I said, they don't really need to pull people in because if you do what you've been doing with Star Wars to keep the the main idea of what Star Wars is, you're gonna pull people in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It did back when the movie first came out, where there's hardly any sci-fi's. To now with the Disney series,
Yeah.
people from all over will be interested eventually. There's going to be exciting new features. Like people might want to see what that new screen, how it looks on a movie.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it as we see these larger, big budget films or series like this.
Well, I think the other thing that's really been the driving force for Star Wars is the practical.
Yeah.
Because
practical.
you
Oh,
can
man.
have only so much done with 3D and integration, but if you have an actual figure or something there that looks like it belongs, it will sell so much better.
The Wookiees, the aliens.
I mean,
Just all the
the
aliens.
Rancor.
Yeah, the Rancor. It looks so awesome. It looks so good, and it makes it so much easier to act with because it's like you said with the other or everything. It's there. It's right there.
And like using the ships, like if they would have done those 3D, it wouldn't have sold as well.
Right.
Like, they have the
Well, it would have been more like King Kong style animation style if they did it with that, and it would have looked a lot worse.
Yeah.
Like I said, they would have spent a lot more time because they talked about how they would also have to move the lighting as well to keep that consistent. And so it was a lot easier to just move the camera. They just had to figure out how to do that and make something that could do that.
Yeah. And that's where the creation of that really awesome arm comes in and stuff, and all these other things they did. I know I've always loved too, like Frank Oz's stuff where he talks about like being underneath the stage controlling Yoda, and just like how that was such a chore because he's like you got to be like on your hands and knees for like 5 hours. Oh yes. That's the actors in the original trilogy had. It's crazy the things that like were pioneered then that again like you said everyone now just thinks about like that just happens, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And it's all been ILM and Light and Magic. Crazy thing too, a lot of people don't really like to hear is like people who complain about Kathleen Kennedy thinking she's like brand new into Star Wars. She's like, oh, she just took over and she's never been around Star Wars long enough, she doesn't deserve this. I'm like, well, honestly, she's been around since before Raiders of the Lost Ark premiered. She's been working with ILM and George for a long time. We don't have to agree with everything she's doing as a directive lead or something, but like, which she doesn't do much of, honestly, anyway. But she's been around Star Wars for a hot minute. I didn't really know that until I got into it. It really started like seeing all of them together. Like, it was crazy. It was like, okay, I'll kudos.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that myself. It's a weird how that's never made it in the rounds of the better things
woman.
never do. Yeah.
Because they want a reason to hate her. That's it.
Yeah.
That's 100% it.
A lot of people don't enjoy the sequels, and they're vicious about it. Vicious.
So that's
I
my 2
think-
cents on that.
I think the reason why people don't like the sequels is just it's a different direction.
Yeah.
and there's stuff I like, stuff I dislike, and I don't
Yeah.
want to get into that. It's again a
Right.
whole subject, but yeah, it's just Kathleen because she's in charge. It's just like blaming the president for any
Yeah.
time the government goes wrong
I mean, that's why George
in the
sold it.
U.S.
George sold it because he was so sick of the Star Wars fans half the time. He's like, it's just the movies aren't what I want them to be, and apparently a lot of people agree with that.
Yeah, well,
Bullied
and
the
you know
child actor into a mental disease.
his vision grew so large
Yeah.
that it ended up being other people's visions when it came to other material, and then fans took their own visions and
Yep.
they expected their visions to be continued.
And that's
So
the
we
problem straight
see,
to today.
yeah. And the only thing that I think was the biggest fault on the sequels, and like I said, I don't want to get too far in, it's just we had too many different voices.
Yeah.
We had a different director.
Too
Uh,
many cooks. Too many
and
cooks.
so when you have different directors like that, when you have the same director for 6 films and then 3 films, you get multiple.
Right.
So and these are different from the previous. You do see somebody else's vision on it,
Yeah.
and it just happens that way.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I think it's nice that they're going back to the original, because that's what made Star Wars so iconic.
Right.
Because honestly, I don't mind some of the mishaps with seeing, minor little, I could see a seam in somebody's costume or
Right.
whatever. I'd rather have that than, really, because at least it draws me in more seeing, almost that fleshy tone that you can never get, at least with our technology currently with animation.
Yeah.
So, so I always think animation's great for enhancing, great for cool effects, but I don't think when you have a live action movie, I think a lot of times it pulls away from the movie when you have that kind of almost rubbery look to things, which they are getting better at it, of
Oh,
course. But
way way better. Yes, I could totally agree with that one.
still, you can't replace live
No,
things.
we saw that with the prequels. Honestly, like they were not. I'm not gonna. I love the stories, but I'm not gonna sit there and be like, oh, they're visual masterpieces. No, they were a little weird at some points.
Yeah, they had their faults. They had things you can, if you pay attention, you'll see issues here and there. Weird camera angles where they're trying to hide things, and some of the stuff that doesn't make sense. But they did hearing how the hoops they had to jump through,
Yeah.
how many times that the movie got almost pulled.
Mm-hmm.
It's so surprising that we got the movie that we got.
Yeah, that's very
If
true.
George would have given in the many times he almost did, we wouldn't have had the movie.
Right, and I mean, yeah, the creation of the movie was bogged down with studios saying, "I don't want this movie. No one wants this movie." Then the sequels, they were so sought after that they had to use different names and stuff, like Blue Harvest for was that Return of the Jedi? Was Blue Harvest or Empire? I think Return of the Jedi was called Blue
Uh,
Harvest,
yeah, I think
but
it's Return.
they had to nickname them different things because the fandom was so crazy. If the paparazzi found out that they were filming, they would have been on them like white
I
on
mean,
rice,
and we
just
still see that today
immediately.
because they were using what Plo Koon for Luke.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like,
Yeah, that was a fun one. I was excited. In the Mandalorian, we're gonna see Plo Koon come get Grogu. Plo Koon lived. No, it's Luke Skywalker. That's cool, but like, Plo
Yeah.
Koon would have been cool too.
well,
Well,
you
that
really
that
enjoyed
happened.
it, so.
That happened back then. People telling little rumors that
Hmm.
maybe somebody just either made up or they misread in a magazine or somebody reported wrong. The only difference now is it's shared to everyone instead of you know the telephone game in your local neighborhood.
Right. I remember like with like even like the Star Wars video games and like other video games back in the day too. People would be like, "Oh, I heard about this cheat code, or if you do this, this, and this, and this, or Masingo for Pokemon." You got to go to this place at this time and turn left and then hit Y 3 times and then throw the fishing rod and you'll catch the best Pokemon in ever and it'll kill your game. Or they wouldn't tell you it'll kill your game and then it would just kill your game. Back in my day.
So that's one thing with the internet. It really spreads more of that, but you can also get a lot more accurate.
Yeah, love and
So
hate because of course people who don't like something are the loudest about whatever they don't like and now they can all connect together and be angry.
I still think it's so interesting how much love the movie got right away.
Yeah.
Um, and you think about it, it's interesting with how the culture was at that time.
Right.
Um, sci-fis weren't that huge.
Mm-hmm.
They had a couple of sci-fis, but it was kind of a nerdy thing to really like. And how much public just ate it up, and they just, the premiere was so huge. They talking about how there's so many people outside the
Yeah.
theater, and then you hear about, and you even see about the lines. I mean,
Right.
a
Two
week
hours,
after
3 hours.
premiered, and there are people still, the lines are several hours long.
People would literally leave a showing and then go stand in line again
Yeah.
to
Well,
watch it.
this one of the guys in the documentary was talking about how they watched it he watched it with his wife, and she's like, "You want to see it again?" And they went
Yep.
back on a line and waited another 2 hours just to watch it again. I don't see myself doing that,
Dude, I
but
would
I
in a
guess if it was
heartbeat.
so revolutionary, I could. I don't know.
I'm sure a different time and place too, where we don't have the computers and stuff that we can watch all kinds of things on. That's the bee's knees. My older relatives and stuff always love to talk about that. Yeah, seeing it in theaters, it changed the world. Like it really like created this crazy huge fandom. It's like one of the first series to become this saga that people just stuck with for decades.
And one of the main reasons for that is ILM.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
it has to
the
be.
the cool thing is to watch movies that came out around that time. Nothing near that quality. Like I said, the only thing that was close to the quality at that time was the 2001 Space Odyssey,
Yeah.
and that was a whole different animal. Whereas, like I said, it was artsy, it was
Mm-hmm.
slow. It was just kind of it's kind of boring. It was most people watch it because it looked cool. It had
Right.
cool effects. It was so futuristic. So the fact that you not only get that kind of cool effects, but you have a really interesting story, amazing music score. It has literally everything in it, and then you have this groundbreaking effects that you've never even considered to be in a movie that was ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
But and the writing was questionable by Lucas originally, but after it got cleaned up, yeah, I think the biggest thing, which was still unheard of at that time, was the relatability, which he really liked because his first big one is the American Graffiti, which is
Yeah.
something a lot of the um, you know kind of mid age. I wouldn't say middle age, it's more like your 30s, your adults really could relate because they grew up like that. Teenagers is relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that, Luke, the story of Luke and Leia, even her being a princess, she was a very grounded character.
Yeah.
So I think
Luke was the
that's
airheaded one. He was, that's the contrast. It was even a really different thing. The male lead was this airheaded, pretty boy who was whiny.
Which is why it's so funny to me when people are like, well, why is Leia doing all this? Why does Leia get this as the young Leia?
Oh yeah.
Because she's intelligent and, like,
Mm.
will fuck something up.
That's how her force powers kind of came through. Instead of being taught by anyone, it just was her latent ability to be personable and be outgoing and adventurous.
And that it has something to do, I think, with being raised by a senator
Yeah.
and being a figure for the people. But
She has so much of Padme in her, but almost more of Anakin than Luke does.
Yes.
Luke is very just kind of, oh yeah, that's my boy. And then if they had actually raised, or if Anakin had stayed in the light side, kind of like backstory and raised the two of them, I think
Anakin
Leia
would've
would have
gotten
been
them in
way
trouble.
stronger.
Anakin would have, or not Anakin, Luke would have gotten them in trouble.
Yeah,
And
probably.
Leia would have finished it.
Yeah.
She would have finished
I
any
think-
argument.
I think if Leia was taught by Anakin, honestly, she probably would have eventually gone to the dark side because she's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so. She gets, which they did a real well of doing that. Anakin's ambitious side,
Mm-hmm.
ambitious and adventurous side, where Luke's a lot more calmer.
Yeah.
He gets Anakin's whiny side.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He gets all the whiny.
Yep. But then he kind of eventually gets that level-headedness
Yeah.
from Padme.
Yeah, yeah.
And
When
he's
he
always out to
matured,
help.
he
Yeah.
gets that from because Padme was when she really took on the senator role. She really got real level-headed. Took on because when she you'll see that in episode two, she gets out a lot more dangerous situations, and she does it in episode one as well. But you see in episode three, she's not so much into jumping and dangerous. She gets
Mm.
more mature, and you kind of see that with Luke. He's less jumping into danger now. He's keeping a level head, so you kind of see it, and they did a real good job at kind of you can see the parents in them.
Yeah.
Which really makes him a great Jedi and Leia a fantastic general,
Yeah.
especially in a rebellion.
It worked out. The Force knew what it was doing, you know?
Yeah. Which we can say the Force did, but it's really the writers that are like,
Exactly.
this is how it needs to be.
So connecting it back to the people behind the scenes, if you guys had to choose, what would be your favorite prop or like object in Star Wars? I'm gonna go first. It's a lightsaber. Lightsabers are gorgeous. Their design was so cool. It was mind blowing to me because the only thing I saw besides that in my youth was Gundam, and that was still the same idea. So lightsabers are my number one thing. Their creation from being just like random bits and pieces thrown together from like a camera's flash holder or like obvious like parts from like assemblies for plumbing, and which is definitely something I've thought about before. Is like taking pop-up assemblies from sinks and you can almost make a lightsaber out of one, no problem, just for cosplay and fun. What would be your favorite prop?
Droids.
Droids, okay.
Like, just because they actually made them.
Yeah.
You can actually have like a BB-8 that rolls around like a ball. And like R2, all the stuff behind it. Yes, I know it was a person in a
You cannot have a C-3PO because Anthony Daniels will not.
Yeah, but so the astromechs.
Yeah, the astromechs are now mechanic. So easy to make a fun little machine out of. And
I totally want a chopper.
yeah. When we go to Galaxy's Edge, you need to grab some. I believe you have.
I had a friend of mine when I was stationed in El Paso who was part of the R2 Builders Club, and he was building the full R2. He was doing the old how they did, which was a lot of wood.
Yeah.
And you can do those. They have tutorials online, but it's at least $10,000. You're gonna spend a lot more depending on. Yeah, I love just how they build this stuff.
Yeah.
For me, the ships are one of my biggest. That's really what drew me in, and it's a hard pull. Just a close second, or a big second for me would probably be the blasters.
Blasters, okay.
I just love to see because I recognize this is from either this World War II, World War One gun. Or they added this.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. They literally took the scopes and they said, that looks too modern. We're just going to flip them around backwards and stick them somewhere else.
All right.
Or
so there's a big controversy.
The E11,
yeah.
They used windshield wiper blades on the end of it. It's so funny that they did stuff like that, and it's so simple.
Right.
If I tell you that, you're like, oh, I can see it now, and then it ruins it for you. But that's prop making. And Star Wars is one of my favorite ones because they didn't have the budget on the props to make a lot of their own props. So a lot of stuff they just kind of combined what they could around. Either it was from models or from a surplus store that they would get a lot of those props from. That's where the guns came from. Like for instance, Boba Fett's blaster was a old flare gun. So that's the interesting things, those are my favorite just because it's kind of the same idea where they just kind of just took old models or old World War II stuff and just threw it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you add enough stuff to a blaster, it's a space blaster.
Yeah, like the totally fake 100% prop stuff I've made back here. That one, that's a vacuum handle right there. That is a vacuum handle. And yeah, like I loved when I found like a little fun scope for it to kit bash together. I put it on backwards, and you were the one who pointed that out. You were like, I'm happy you did that because a lot of people put it the other way, and it's like that doesn't look Star Wars-y. The scope is supposed to be reversed.
Which kind of like
it has its own tails, but that's really cool. There's not many other franchises out there that have this cemented idea of what it is. Like, this looks like this, which is why the Halcyon to me is so kind of off-putting to a degree, because it doesn't look like anything else we've seen in Star Wars. It has a very odd, soft feel, which maybe is because it's a cruiser, but it just looks different. It looks so different.
It's a cruiser, and it's way too luxury.
Yeah.
And it
Put
just
me in a freighter.
feels like they're pushing it too much.
Yeah.
They are pushing it way too much.
Yeah.
Because it was in the Lego thing.
Yeah. But that was a fun one. The Lego thing was really good.
Well, yeah, it's a fun story, but they got it in comics, they got it in Lego, they're trying to mention it everywhere.
A lot.
To make you go to it.
Oh, 100%.
But it just feels too forced.
I could agree with that. That's kind of what's happening with this newer age, though, under Disney, I think, is they are forcing a lot. Yeah. And that's kind of what's changed a lot of the background stuff. And what's causing these irregular problems like the snowspeeder size difference in Obi-Wan. I think it's mostly just because of crunch.
But,
like, they're having a lot more of that.
And also, I think part of it, too, is people that they're pulling in people that are used to working on films, but not Star Wars. And we have this age now where things are a lot easier to make, and you're not just trying to make it from scratch. You get a different. It doesn't have as much heart behind it, because they literally bled and sweat into each one of those models and each one of those props they make, because they had to. They had to make it from hand. But now you get these. They can manufacture a lot of these really quickly. Or they can just animate, like use animation to bring that in. So there's not as much heart behind it as there was prior. And plus, like I said, a lot of these guys didn't have experience with filmmaking. They were just artists or people that just loved it. And so you get a whole different feelings, and you get somebody that's coming in that, hey, design the ship, and they've worked on so many movies before. Well, yeah, they get this great resume, but they kind of got this whole habit of how they design things. They had this idea, and so you kind of lose that.
Right.
The feel that Star Wars has always been.
And I the books too have been really good. That's a fun one. The authors, Claudia Gray, was so fun to talk to. Such an awesome person. And the High Republic, and even the of course the EU, the expanded universe stuff now.
That's a ship I would go to. I would go to if they had a High Republic cruiser instead of the Halcyon. I'd go on that.
Sadly, the Halcyon began its voyaging in the High Republic.
Okay, cool.
It is a High Republic cruiser.
Themed.
So, that's maybe again, that's maybe why it looks a little bit different, because it's High Republic. But yeah, the High Republic, yeah, exactly. But everything is sequels right now. They got to keep pushing the sequels until something, I guess, else come out. I mean, at least Acolyte will be the first time we're getting to see the High Republic. Yeah, I would love the High Republic movies. That's kind of what I hope for the future of Star Wars kind of thing. Again, is like, let's get away from the Skywalker saga timeline, and let's go somewhere else.
Maybe that's what Takai is working on.
Maybe, who knows?
So much speculation.
He's been getting in trouble for a few of his movies lately, I hear.
Yeah, he's made headlines again.
Yeah, he's headlines of queer baiting. So, that's a fun one. It's also, and that's one of the big things with Star Wars too, has been, and it's not background at all, really. It's very forward, is the politics of it, the injustice at the Empire, the xenophobia and stuff like that. And being on the edge, not only of technological stuff, but adversity stuff, and being like, no, we're going to get leads that are, different colored. We're going to get very different ethnicities from now on, and all of this stuff. So, and kudos for that, for them really sticking to their guns about it.
I hope. I have my doubts with Disney in charge, and they wanting to sell to China. I see they'll probably start it, and then we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they did it with Obi-Wan. We had a major female person of color that was a major role. Though the fan base tore her down. Sadly.
Because they didn't want a female.
Yeah, it's that's the worst part of it. It's not most fans. Sorry, it's not most fans who are screaming and yelling. It's just these very angry few
With the
who, and a
microphone.
lot of bots, honestly. That's the other
Yeah.
crazy thing. That are just
Well,
going nuts about it because they're just unable to not understand. Like you said earlier, if their vision of Star Wars isn't what comes out on the screen, then they're just not happy. They can't accept
well,
it.
typical people like me and you that enjoy Star Wars, we're not gonna jump on the Twitter and just scream about, we like that episode. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we did, and don't get me wrong, it's not that I'm vocal that I enjoy something, but
Right.
it's more people are more vocal when they hate something,
Oh yeah.
and so you have this small group of that are vocal, that they dislike stuff, or they claim they like Star Wars, but most of them, I feel, at least the ones that have experienced, they claim they like Star Wars, but they don't really have the history. Um,
Yeah.
and again, I don't want to come off as like I'm gatekeeping, but I mean, you can't just trash down an actor,
Yeah. Oh,
because you
100%.
dislike this scene with because you don't like. uh, Honestly, I don't know. I didn't see a huge problem with it. I thought the
Instant
character they
gratification.
had her running.
It was.
I
It
mean,
was the instant gratification. People wanted that instant gratification of it to be exactly what they want, and when it wasn't, they got mad.
Yeah.
Even though
and
they
then
got kind of it later.
a lot of people blame the character, because they started saying, stop being racist. So I'm not racist. The character was written bad, or she was bad
Yeah.
at acting.
No.
I don't think
She's
she
a
was that bad at acting,
fantastic actress.
and that type of character we see in so many of the movies. I mean, heck, Anakin
Mm-hmm.
whines way more than she did.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
Because
People
that's
want to
I mean,
the
forget
thing.
the. Yeah. They forget the thing that is not relevant to them winning the argument.
Because she was
she,
such a Sith. She was so driven by
Yeah.
revenge and emotion. Like,
and
that is
she
a
didn't
Sith.
have the mature upbringing of the Jedi environment.
Right.
She was basically raised by herself, watching her back. I don't know her full backstory, but I mean,
Yeah.
I would
I don't know
love
how
to
early
see it.
she got into the Inquisitors. But I'm
You're
sure
right.
it wasn't easy constantly watching your back. Are they going to find out that you know, I'm here to kill Vader?
Right.
So, you can't. She can't be perfect, and she's not going to be, that necessarily that cool badass
Mm-hmm.
Darth Vader kind of mentality, because she's not there yet.
Yeah. Oh, I
I
would. Yeah, I
mean,
would love to see like what happened to her before she joined the Inquisitors. Because if it was from a very young age, I think she'd be a lot more powerful with
yeah.
other powers, perhaps. But
Well, and she went on the underground stuff.
yeah.
So, or
But
the underground road or whatever.
but
So
I
we could
really
see more
feel
into
like
that.
yeah, I really feel like younger Reva stuff would be awesome.
Well,
Uh.
and they wanted to focus on the Inquisitors, and I
Mm-hmm.
think because we have seen a lot of some of the Inquisitors thanks to Rebels. And like the head Inquisitor, I don't remember his name, but the head one, we've seen a lot, and he doesn't really have that much emotion to see. So I imagine if they replaced him with her, we'd have a lot more boring, story. Um, and we already getting
Yeah, the Grand
Vader in the
Inquisitor,
mix.
and that's
Yeah,
he doesn't even have a name. It's just Grand Inquisitor.
yeah.
All he was before
Uh,
that was a Temple Guard.
they're wanting to do Darth Vader
Mm-hmm.
in the movie so they can't have two of that same kind of type character, where it's kind of
Yeah.
this kind of quiet, um, stoic, daunting character. It would get boring. So we
Right.
needed somebody. I mean, heck, we see a lot more with Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Was way more same type of character. Same, a lot of similar scenario. But he was a lot more spoiled.
Yeah.
And he acted like it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, getting at that character and you not dogging Kylo as much as that, it's just
It's very telling.
Mm-hmm. The the main thing with Star Wars, I think that the fandom has always been a divisive one, but that's just because it's big.
Yeah.
Which just speaks to the volume of how exactly big it is that it still does this well. And people always say, "I'm never watching another Star Wars thing again, man. This was crap." And then they watch the next thing, and then they complain about it, and that's literally their whole life, and that's
Because
fine.
uh,
that's what gets
I,
them views.
Yeah.
I learned that when people make those kind of statements when I worked at Walmart as a teenager.
Oh,
People
yeah.
say stuff like that all the time. I'm not coming back here ever again, and I'll see them the next day. So
Right,
Right.
usually when
exactly.
somebody says something like that, I just, okay, see you tomorrow.
Yeah,
They're just
yep,
trying to get a rise so they can get more views, so they can get more money.
yep.
Usually.
Well, and that's one of, again, to kind of tie it, I guess, back to ILM and stuff. That's one of the things I've enjoyed about the background of Star Wars and the backbone of ILM and all these things, LucasArts games, and which sadly got taken down. But when it was in its heyday in the early 2000s and everything was really booming, it was really cool. This you felt like this was its own world. Like this had nothing to do with Hollywood almost. Like as much as it was. It really allowed it to breathe and to be its own thing. It's just sad that it's not going to last forever in that special power, in that special way.
It was the closest thing at the time that we got to another movie for a while.
Yeah.
That and the books. I remember playing, some of those games over and over just to kind of relive or make my own movie. I remember doing that in Battlefront.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to set my own scenarios, my own effects. And this was the first one when we didn't have a lot of the prequels yet.
Right.
And then, some of the older games that, I played a lot on the PS1. And I go back and I was playing them on the computer and it's just, it's crazy how much imagination I had to use because they weren't that good of a game, but
yeah,
it was the time.
The games, LucasArts games, really honestly saved me so much boredom in my younger life. From the Super Nintendo Empire Strikes Back game, all the way to Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, and Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, and now with Battlefront 2 and Force Unleashed, Jedi Fallen Order. I am so excited for Survivor. Fallen Order 2 is going to be so good.
I can't wait for that one.
It's gonna be so good, and they push a lot of they push a lot of really cool stuff with that because they're back with all that money. They got Disney money, they got Lucasfilm money, they got money.
Well, and here's hoping that they're tying it into a live action at some way, because
cool.
I really want to see Cal.
I mean, yeah, they have that. They literally scan the actor. I mean, he's an actor. They can just
they can have
He's
Cal
a
Kestis.
good actor.
Which is why I've always people yeah, they can have Starkiller. I'm like, that's different. He's just so powerful. Leave him alone.
Although I think if they bring him in, they would nerf him. But
Yeah, they
it would
would.
be like a, this is what he could have been, or something
Yeah,
like that.
in a sense. But it's cool again in that same Whitwer. They have his face, but you've only got another 20 years before he doesn't look like that anymore, and you have to go old Starkiller.
Well, you kind of already have to.
Yeah.
He's
not as that was 20 years ago.
I mean, it'd be nice to allude to it,
Don't
or
do
like
that.
that's kind of like almost you could use the game as almost like the whole Legends idea, where it's like somebody's because he killed a lot on planets, like that's their oh, he was just so powerful and devastating, or the stormtroopers view this. He came in and just wrecked the ship apart and all this stuff. It wasn't that in real life. It wasn't as bad, but
yeah.
Well, yeah, because
it would be cool to have him.
People who killed Shaak Ti.
Yeah, he's one of the many people who have the honor of killing Shaak Ti.
Just got four or five.
3.
Three. Okay.
It's Starkiller, Grievous, and Anakin kill Shaak Ti. No one knows exactly which one's 100% canon. I think. If anything, I would say the Anakin one.
I would laugh
her
though if she
meditating.
was still around though, in some way, because of
I like
all the
how though
rumors of her death.
it's hilarious. So in Force Unleashed, they were like, and Shaak Ti survived, and she's almost a nudist for some reason. She's on Felucia, acting like a barbarian.
Yep.
I really enjoyed the games a lot, and that's kind of what got me into all of this. And it sucks that I didn't start streaming and start all this sooner, but whatever. I'm starting it now. Who cares? Let's go. Moving forward. Star Wars inspired me to want to just live in the world and talk about it, create stories, create my own narratives. It sucked. I could have gotten into maybe directing, could have gone to school and all that fun stuff.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Shoulda, coulda, exactly. It's fine. The Force is with me now, and maybe I'll make an awesome fan film soon with just my cosplays that I've made and stuff. because that's a whole nother aspect of it is with the community of Star Wars. And to me, the real backbone of any series is the fandom, because it wouldn't exist otherwise. We're nuts. Star Wars fans are nuts. The amount of time we spend creating costumes that are screen accurate, and the things we'll go through to acquire props or to build them ourselves,
or just the lore.
The thousands of dollars we spend on, figures and books and comics, and the people who spend thousands of hours a day reading lore and deep Star Wars stuff. It's such a cool
this
thing.
is all going back to the beginning, that George Lucas really wanted the effect of a living, breathing world.
Yeah.
He talked about he got his first degrees in sociology and all this stuff, and an idea of how mythology, I can't say the word, mythology.
Yeah, mythological.
Mythology in general, how it affected society, and how it kind of started a lot of early civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of these kind of this mythology of these heroes and almost magic. So when they replicate that with Jedi and the Force, and this whole almost living, breathing world, that you see this. I mean, you get quick scenes in like the cantina of this alien. You're like, wow, that's so cool. Where did they come from? What world are they from?
And
this is how it all expands
on that.
Yeah,
I've heard there's
and they've dropped encyclopedias, and that's the other cool thing. Just like for the actual fans, they've dropped so many encyclopedias of Star Wars bestiaries.
Not released stuff.
No, I know.
Like behind the scenes that no one knows about.
If he didn't do that, we wouldn't have drowned ourselves in the props or making costumes or.
I spent many a Scholastic book fair buying Star Wars discography books and just huge photo albums and calendars.
You think about it, you can pick up other movies that you may have seen, like some sci-fi movies, and you don't really delve too deep into them,
right?
Because they don't push that envelope of that living, breathing world.
Oh, they do not try to push it at all. They want you to just come in, get distracted for the few hours, and leave. George really did, like he said, he wanted you to come in and leave wondering and questioning. And that's the thing, is it almost gives a lot of people wrong place, wrong time, like Born vibes, like, oh, I should have been born in the galaxy far, far away. And that's why people make it their whole life. They make it their whole identity is Star Wars, is because it's that amazing. It was from the ILM crew, from stage builders, from the painters, from all of the original producers. I mean, all of these creative heads that helped George on his path to the original 6 movies. There was so much love for Star Wars, and it shines through so much. And then again, to kind of tie it back to what you said earlier, when you have so many random thoughts and random people making the sequels, it just doesn't have that same vibe. It feels like the TV shows now, where it's like, oh, it's obviously a different director. But
I would say though that Dave Filoni has done a pretty good job at trying to make that dedication that George did. He's one of the closest ones that I've seen that has really done well at telling stories and kind of keeping that world.
Dave Filoni is a blessing for Star Wars. Love Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni is so amazing. Because again, that's what we're starting to see though. Is now it is the fans who are getting to go and work in the world of Star Wars. I mean, again, I always love the story of that one YouTuber who did the Luke deep fake better than Disney did, so they just hired him.
Well, they did that for a lot of movies and a lot of big stuff. They used a lot of people from the 501st, which is the costume group.
Yeah, the
Mandalorian. They make
Mandalorian.
screen-accurate costumes.
Right.
Yep.
Well, a lot of those costumes, because they make them for wearing in constant use, are actually built better than the ones they actually used on screen. Because they're meant to be worn around and not for that couple shots.
Yeah.
Practical effects again.
Yep, exactly. That's one of the
practical on the fan side.
Yeah, I guess the only weird effect ever is, I always love the myths of stormtroopers always talk about their armor is supposed to displace shots, and so many of these things are supposed to do so good, and plot armor is so thick. The stormtroopers, if you're aiming at anyone who's a main character, they can't do anything.
There's a little bubble.
Yep. I've always loved the special scenes though, and the bloopers. Oh, the bloopers were so good in the original extra DVDs. Learning about the stormtrooper who bonks his head when he's coming into the room, and now I see it forever. Jango Fett. There's a montage where, or not montage, but there's a callback where he does the same thing, getting into the Slave One in Episode 2.
There's several. If you pay attention, there's a lot of stormtroopers are tripping and hitting the things. I mean,
looking at nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go to the real reason why the armor's there, so that the movie can be watched by anyone.
Exactly.
They don't see them slaughtering people.
Yeah.
But it's just that iconic look.
Oh yeah, no, it's and that again, time and time again. The lightsabers, the Jedi, the Sith, the stormtroopers, the ships.
The
they
aliens.
are the aliens.
Well, not aliens, but like the
no,
other
yeah,
species.
well, they are iconic. Because what was Star Trek? Star Trek has iconic ships,
Yeah.
but they didn't start doing aliens until way later in their series because they just painted someone a different color and called them an alien.
Yeah.
But I love that he pushed so much on when he wanted something that's never been seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that with the Millennium Falcon. He was
Yeah.
talking about it. Because they had a movie come out. I can't remember what it was called. They had a ship that looked similar to the
Corellian
Tantive
Corvette,
IV.
yeah, Tantive, yeah,
Because that was going to be Han Solo's ship.
yeah,
And they said we can't have it be a major ship in the movie because it's already someone's somewhat similar ship in another movie. They beat me to it. So they had to make a completely new ship. It's just so funny how.
what do they call it? The hamburger. With
Yeah,
the hamburger with the bite taken out.
It looked like a large hamburger how it looked originally, and then like the guy, the original idea, he's just sitting in the kitchen. He's like, I could put two plates together. So well, I can't do a flying saucer, so you add the engine to the back.
Yeah.
Add a little forward thing, and you need a cockpit. I can't do normal cockpit because it's got to look different from anything ever. So we'll put it on the side. Not American, of course. We got to put it on the other side.
Yeah, to make it look very different, so it's got to be on the other side. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look at the thing. It's gorgeous. Look at that thing behind you. It's so again, it's iconic. If you see that, even if you've never seen Star Wars, people will be like, "Oh, that's that Star Wars thing."
Yeah.
It's made the whole world knows of Star Wars. They might not have seen it, but they know of it.
Anything flying that was shaped like that before,
right?
And the same thing with the TIE fighters. They're completely different. And sure, we've had similar like the flying saucer idea, but to have the shape and then have the cockpit on the side like that.
When it gave you more of that dogfight vibe when you look at an X-wing that has like a actual cockpit and the nose that narrows down like a normal jet does.
Yeah, well, you get that with the jet, and then you get where he kind of made this big like hot rod that was kind of shambled put together, and you have that in the cockpit that was like almost like it was custom put to the side. And add these kind of the big dish and all these extra things that he added on there.
What, shipping something?
It's a Corellian freighter, yeah.
So the front of it is supposed to like lock onto something, so that's why the cockpit's on the side, so you can see past the cargo.
Yep, and that's the fun Star Wars reasons that we nerds make up as we work for Star Wars, and we're like, actually, twin ion engine, and that's why it's called a TIE fighter.
But back then, they were just like, let's make something that's never seen before.
Exactly.
Traditionally, you put it in the middle like everything else, but we're just going to throw it on the side,
But then it makes sense, and it works, and you're like, oh wait, this actually was a reason for that? Okay, cool.
And that's the beauty of like the taking those risks. It really paid off, and it's a risk reward world in entertainment, and Star Wars really definitely won, because obviously we've been sitting here talking about it. So then to kind of wrap up, I will simply say that I am so excited to see what Star Wars does in the future, because I know that ILM and with Disney money and all this fun stuff, they're going to do some crazy stuff. They've invented a new lightsaber that can actually retract and like come out. Yeah, it's slow, but it's getting there. We're getting there. What are you looking forward the most from like the background technical side of all this?
More in depth for the volume.
Okay.
And like what they can do with that going forward.
There's a lot of good documentaries that they've been producing about all the shows on Disney Plus. That's good. And then Mike, what are you looking forward for like the fun background things?
You've sat with me watching things, and I can't help one of my favorite things to do to watch this when they like the original Star Wars, and when they did that again with the Mandalorian and Obi-Wan, because they went back to how they did it. The ideas where they can pull something out of nothing, and you're like, I recognize that.
Oh,
It's almost like a scavenger hunt. I mean, I love that. I love the idea of, the creative, new thing that I never thought of, using that for that, and it
Yeah.
works so well and it blends so well. So that's what I look for. I look forward to the new, somebody coming in. Have you tried, or they just all of a sudden they put something in backwards? That looks cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The simplest little change can make everything completely different.
So
from a certain
just-
point of view.
I don't necessarily, I don't need crazy technology. I welcome it, but I just love to see the new ideas with props and ships and stuff like that. All the things they can do.
And with so many of the fans getting into the world of the Star Wars workforce, that'll really help, I think, keep it alive and keep that vibrance, because that's what we want. We want that in Star Wars. So then, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. In the comment section down below, let us know what you think, and tell us what your favorite part of the ILM Light and Magic documentary is, or just what you really loved about the background bloopers and things like that, deleted scenes.
Are you practical or are you animation, like visual effects?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good conversation to have. And then don't forget, of
Or
course,
how those effects changed you.
Yes, that's always good. Personal stuff in Star Wars, because we all have personal stories with Star Wars. We could write a million love letters. So then share this video so that we can reach all the lovely Star Wars fans out there, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I look forward to seeing you, and I'm sure we all will look forward to seeing you next week. So may the Force serve you well.
May the Force be with you.